I'm Lynn Yoffee, Managing Editor of BioWorld, and in case you're not familiar with us, we publish BioWorld Today, a daily news service covering the biotech sector, BioWorld Insight, which is a weekly, which provides in-depth analysis, BioWorld International, a variety of research reports, audio conferences, webinars, and now a blog called BioWorld Perspectives. You can also follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So we all know a panel about getting startup biotech funding in this day and age is a potential downer, so I thought I'd try and lighten the mood a little bit. These VC t-shirts were a recommendation in BioWorld's annual holiday gift guide. Today we're going to examine what's changed about starting up a biotech company since the economic crisis of 2008. We're going to hear from a CEO who has raised a boatload of venture capital, a CEO who has successfully financed his company without venture capital, a venture capitalist who still believes in innovation, and a Wall Street analyst who will talk about exit strategies. But before we get started, I'm going to run through some stats on early stage biotech fundraising. All of these data have been analyzed by BioWorld Insight editor Trista Morrison. So this first slide shows all the money raised by private biotechs. It's not just venture capital, and includes things like angel funding and bridge loans, but the vast majority is venture capital. You can see that investments in private biotechs have started climbing back from their 2008 low of $4.13 billion, but it's a very slow climb. Also, the $1.76 billion raised in the first 5 months of this year is actually less than the $1.99 billion raised in the same period last year. If we keep going at this rate, we're only going to raise $3.96 billion total this year, which is actually worse than in 2008. But there is a silver lining. These charts show how the money raised by private biotechs over the last few years breaks down by round. You can see that the percentage of money going into seed and Series A rounds decreased from 25% in 2009 to 18% in 2010. That's probably not terribly surprising to any of you, because after the 2008 crash, we saw VCs putting more money into existing portfolio companies that couldn't exit and less money into new investments. What might be surprising to you is that things look better this year for Series A. So far in 2011, we've seen the percentage of money going into Series A rounds pop back up to 27%. But there's a catch to that. This is seed and Series A biotech financings for the first 5 months. The biggest startup round by far this year was $200 million raised by a cancer company, H3 Biomedicine. And that wasn't venture money. H3 is a subsidiary of Eisai, and the $200 million came entirely from Eisai as research funding. The second biggest round was $100 million raised by oncology and infectious disease startup Acetylon. This wasn't venture money either. The round was led by Hangzhou Binjian Investment Holding Company, which is a holding firm for Chinese real estate billionaire Jim Xingqi, and additional money came from Acetylon's CEO, other private entrepreneurs in China, the US, and other countries. If you back those two rounds out, then the numbers say investments in Series A rounds in 2011 are about 13% of the total funding raised. For anyone trying to start up a biotech, that means things went from bad to worse in 2010, and they're going from worse to just awful in 2011. But if you keep those two rounds in the analysis, as our expert analyst Trista Morrison did, I think it illustrates that the nature of startup financing is changing. Maybe it's not all about venture capital anymore, although venture still plays a huge role, and that's really what we're here to talk about today. I want to make one more point on data before turning to our STEAM panel. BioWorld does a quarterly analysis of how much venture money is invested into preclinical companies versus companies that already have drugs in the clinic. We also look at how much goes into innovative companies versus those that are licensing drugs from others, which we label specialty pharmas. slide shows is that in 2010 we saw more Series A money going into firms that were already in the clinic, but that dropped way down in the first quarter of 2011. So the Series A money today is going into real preclinical startups, but those preclinical startups are not innovating their own products. They've licensed existing preclinical assets from other companies. What that means, at least to me, is that when we hear people say they're concerned about who is funding innovation in biotech, those concerns are warranted. But I'll be interested to hear the Pappas take. So, before we get non-traditional, let's hear from a CEO who has financed his company entirely with venture capital. Stuart Collison is a partner at Ford Ventures and CEO of Merck's spin-out Tioga Pharmaceuticals, which is conducting a phase 3 trial of its compound to treat IBS. Tioga raised a healthy $24 million in its Series A venture round with a product candidate already in phase 3. Stuart says Tioga was able to raise all venture capital because of a unique capital-efficient approach. Just 2 employees, and Stuart, I think that includes you as well, right?
That excludes me.
So tell us a little bit more about that, Stuart.
Okay, thanks, Lynn. So, well, thank you for the invitation to join the panel. My background previously, as Lynn mentioned, I'm with Ford Ventures and also run this portfolio company and do a couple of other things outside of it. But my background previously was with Aurora Biosciences as a public company CEO, and that's where I had the pleasure to meet Ted down at the end of the panel here during the public company days, and then prior to that with Glaxo and Baxter. And I'll come back to the Glaxo connection in a moment because that's relevant on this. So when I got into the venture side, 2002, Forward was very much a fund that was building large companies, fully integrated companies with large teams, many times very cutting-edge spin-outs from university technologies or other sources of technology. But it was a model that had sort of mixed results, and I think we see this across the industry, the venture industry, where if you look at any of the analysis done, be it by Thomson or Cambridge Associates, I think we're all aware that venture returns are pretty pathetic. I mean, it's a few percent if you're lucky at the mean or median over 10 to 15 years. So whatever's going on doesn't seem to be working. So the one thing we started doing way before it ever got as trendy as it is today is to start thinking about so-called virtual or capital-efficient companies, and Tioga is a good example of that, and I'll come to that. But why do that? Well, there were a lot of reasons for taking Forward as a firm and a fund in this wrenchingly different direction, because if you look at typical exits, and you can always find the outliers, but if you look at a typical exit, again, pick the mean, median, whatever you wish, over many years, it's often around the 150 area, be it pre-money IPO, be it an M&A acquisition, and these days, of course, the acquisitions are often staged as well, so you get a certain amount of money up front, and then you get a series of payments based on certain performance or technical milestones.